Long before the name Nigeria was ever spoken, the land was already alive with kingdoms, warriors, traders, rivers, forests, and ancient civilizations. The story of Nigeria is not just the story of a country, it is the story of many nations, many tribes, and many destinies woven together by history, struggle, blood, and hope. The ancient land before Nigeria. Centuries ago, before Europeans arrived on African shores, the region now called Nigeria was home to powerful kingdoms and empires. In the north, the great Hausa city-states flourished behind tall mud walls. Cities like Kano, Katsina, and Zaria became centers of trade, Islamic scholarship, leatherwork, and trans-Saharan commerce. Camel caravans crossed the hot Sahara Desert carrying salt, gold, cloth, and books. Islamic teachers built schools where scholars studied Arabic, mathematics, and religion. Farther northeast rose the mighty Kanem-Bornu Empire near Lake Chad. Its rulers commanded armies and controlled important trade routes for hundreds of years. In the southwest, the Yoruba kingdom stood proudly. The ancient city of Ilefe was believed by the Yoruba people to be the birthplace of humanity itself. Skilled artists created magnificent bronze and terracotta sculptures so detailed that Europeans later doubted Africans could have made them. The powerful Oyo Empire later rose with disciplined cavalry armies and kings known as Alafins. In the forests of the south lived the Benin Kingdom, famous for its grand palace, organized government, and extraordinary bronze artworks. The Oba of Benin ruled with authority, while craftsmen produced some of the greatest artworks Africa had ever seen. In the southeast, the Igbo people lived mostly in decentralized communities where elders and councils shared authority instead of kings ruling alone. Though they lacked huge empires, they built thriving societies based on trade, farming, craftsmanship, and community leadership. Across the Niger Delta, riverine communities such as Ijo, Sitikiri, and Efik became skilled fishermen and traders. Their waterways connected inland markets to the Atlantic Ocean. Though these people spoke different languages and practiced different customs, they all shared one thing: the land was theirs. Now, the arrival of Europeans. Everything began to change in the 15th century when Portuguese explorers arrived along the West African coasts. At first, trade between Africans and Europeans focused on pepper, ivory, textiles, and gold. But soon, a darker business emerged: the transatlantic slave trade. European merchants began buying enslaved Africans and transporting them across the Atlantic to work on plantations in the Americas. Many local wars and raids increased because captives could now be sold for guns, alcohol, and goods. For hundreds of painful years, millions of Africans were taken from West Africa. Families were destroyed, villages disappeared, fear spread across many communities. The slave trade left deep scars on the land that would later become Nigeria. By the 9th century, European powers no longer wanted slaves, they wanted land resources and political control. Britain gradually increased its influence in the region through trade and military force. Palm oil from southern Nigeria became highly valuable during the Industrial Revolution because it was used in factories and machinery. British companies entered local territories, signed treaties, sometimes deceptive ones, and slowly took control of kingdoms and communities. In 1897, the British launched a violent attack on the Benin Kingdom. After tensions with the Oba of Benin, the city was burned, treasures were stolen, and many priceless Benin bronzes were taken to Europe. By the early 1900s, the birth of Nigeria. In 1914, a British colonial officer named Lord Frederick Lugard made a decision that would change history forever. He joined the Northern Protectorate into one colony. That new colony was called Nigeria. The name Nigeria was believed to have been suggested by Flora Shaw, a British journalist who later married Lugard. The name came from the river Niger, one of Africa's great rivers. But this new country was not created because the people requested it. Nigeria was created mainly for British administrative convenience and economic control. Suddenly, hundreds of ethnic groups with different cultures, religions, and political stem forced into one nation. The British ruled in through one loose. The British ruled indirectly in many northern areas through emirs and traditional rulers, while southern regions experienced more direct rule and European influence. This system created lasting differences between the regions. While southern regions experienced more direct colonial administration and missionary education, in contrast to the North's indirect rule.
This difference would later shape politics, education, and development across the country.
The rise of nationalism. As years passed, educated Nigerians began demanding freedom. Newspapers, political groups, students, teachers. It was created mainly for British administrative convenience and economic control. Suddenly, hundreds of ethnic groups with different cultures, religions, and political systems were forced into one nation. The British ruled indirectly in many northern areas through emirs and traditional rulers, while southern regions experienced more direct colonial administration and missionary education. This difference would later shape politics, education, and development across the country. The rise of nationalism. As years passed, educated Nigerians began demanding freedom. Newspapers, political groups, students, teachers, and activists started challenging British rule. Powerful nationalist leaders emerged, including Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, Ahmadu Bello, Tafawa Balewa. They fought politically, intellectually, and socially for independence. Across Africa, the wind of freedom was blowing. Colonized nations were demanding self-rule, and Nigeria joined the movement. Independence Day. Finally, on October 1st, 1960, Nigeria gained independence from Britain. Crowds celebrated joyfully, flags waved proudly, hope filled the air. The British Union Jack was lowered, and Nigeria's green and white flag rose for the first time. Tafawa Balewa became Prime Minister, while Nnamdi Azikiwe late into president. While Nnamdi Azikiwe later became president, people believed a glorious future had arrived. The struggles after independence. But independence did not immediately bring peace. Ethnic tensions, political rivalry, corruption, and regional competition began to threaten the young nation. In 1966, Nigeria experienced its first military coup. Soldiers or political leaders were killed. Soon after came counter-coups, violence, and mistrust. Then came one of the darkest periods in Nigerian history, the Nigerian Civil War, also known as the Biafran War. The southeastern region attempted to break away and form the Republic of Biafra under Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. The war caused terrible suffering. Millions of civilians faced starvation, displacement, and death. After nearly 3 years, the war ended in 1970 with the slogan, "No victor, no vanquished." Nigeria remained one country, oil and the new Nigeria. In the decades that followed, oil transformed the nation. Large crude oil reserves discovered in the Niger Delta brought enormous wealth. Cities expanded, roads, bridges, universities, and industries grew rapidly. But oil also brought corruption, environmental destruction, and inequality. While some leaders and elites became rich, many ordinary Nigerians continue struggling with poverty, unemployment, and poor infrastructure. The Niger Delta suffered heavily from oil spills and pollution that damaged rivers, farmlands, and fishing communities. Still, Nigeria continued rising as one of Africa's most influential countries. For many years, military governments ruled Nigeria. Coup became common. Some military leaders promised discipline and reform, while others were accused of dictatorship and corruption. One of the most remembered military rulers was Sani Abacha, whose regime was heavily criticized for human rights abuses. After years of struggle, protests, and international pressure, democracy finally returned in 1999. Olusegun Obasanjo became the civilian president, marking the beginning of Nigeria's Fourth Republic. Nigeria today. Today, Nigeria is known as the Giant of Africa. It is Africa's most populous nation, filled with incredible diversity, oversquares hundreds of language groups, languages, foreign Eastern's writers, musicians, actors, and worldwide. From Afrobeats music to Nollywood films, Nigeria's cultural influence spreads across the globe. Yet the country still faces many challenges: poverty, ethnic and religious tensions, unemployment, poor infrastructure. But despite everything, Nigerians remain known for resilience, intelligence, creativity, and strength. The meaning of Nigeria's story. The history of Nigeria is not a simple tale of kings and government. It is the story of ancient civilizations that existed long before colonialism. It is the story of people forced together under foreign rule. It is the story of struggle for freedom. It is the story of war, hardship. It is the story of survival through war, hardship, and political instability. And above all, it is the story of hope. Because Nigeria is more than borders on a map. Nigeria is millions of dreams, voices, tribes, histories, and destinies learning day after day how to become one nation. What more of this story? Like, comment, and share.